studio today. It is raining, so this will be a good test for the new microphone. Make sure that you can hear me better than you can hear the rain. Hopefully you can. I'm working in a very small space here because just here, outside, you can't quite see it, is a load of stuff that I'm getting ready for Salute. Here is a load of stuff that I'm getting ready for Salute. Back here is a load of stuff that I'm getting ready for something. Can you guess what? Oh yeah, Salute. So this is my painting area currently, small area in the middle here. And guess what I'm painting? Stuff to get ready for Salute. Well, there we go. So I thought I would take you through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 warbands, demo sample warbands that I will be taking to do demo games at Salute on my big terrain board, which is there. You can just about see it leaning up against the window behind me. And yeah, I'll be running demo games on that, hopefully. That is the idea anyway. And if you are subscribed to our newsletter, that's the Acorn, go to oakbound.co.uk/news if you are not subscribed to it, and you will be able to sign up for the free copy every month, which has usually some fun stuff in it, always some fun stuff in it. And this coming up one will have the scenario that I'm going to be running. So if you want to play that at home, you'll be able to do so. So I have decided to pick a few different kinds of bands. I won't show you photos of them close up because I haven't finished painting them yet. But I thought I would do something a bit different in my terrain making video on the terrain board. I mentioned that I normally play kind of capture the flag games with standard Tuatha warbands, just because they're the easiest warbands to get to grips with. You don't have to think too tactically, you can just play with the standard basic rules, and it's a scenario that people are familiar with, but it doesn't work particularly well, or at least it works. It works as a game, but it doesn't show off the Woods as a game to its greatest advantage, because the Woods works on playing off different objectives against each other, different kinds of warband styles against each other. And so it's better to have a variety of things on the table. But that's difficult if you're playing with people who've never played the game before, because not only have they got to learn the rules, but they've got to learn how a particular warband works. And it's a lot to get your head around in an initial game. So I wanted to try and create something that would allow more of the flavour of the game to come across in a demo environment, but also to not make it too complex, too involved. I will have sheets. I can get some out. They're down here in a drawer down the bottom here. So normally when I do demo games with people, I have these kind of sheets that have stats of all of the models, and I will have these for Salute, not these ones. I'm making different ones, obviously, for the different warbands for Salute, so that you've got easy reference for stats and things. But I wanted to give each particular band a very definite flavour that kind of represents the style of play that warband goes along with. So I have got some Tuatha warbands. They're at the back here. I've got one that's made up of Foundry and Gripping Beast miniatures, because we don't have any Tuatha in store, because they're just Dark Age humans, and there's loads of Dark Age humans around. You can pick whatever style you like and go with those. So this warband is a ranged warband, so it's got guys with bows and guys with slings, and all of these warbands, by the way, I'm running at half normal strength. So whereas you'd normally get a full complement of points to pick your warbands, in this case I'm picking half points, and there aren't any leader characters per se. Each warband is going to have a model that kind of represents the leader, but they won't have the freedom of choice of stats. It will just be one of the standard warband troop types leading the warband. So in this case we've got a sort of elite warrior leading the warband, 2 Tuatha with bows and 2 Tuatha with slings. The idea being that that sort of will give an indication of how shooting works, and they will be a very shooting focused warband. I've also got a sorry, I start going too fast and then my mouth can't keep up. I should slow down, chill out, relax. But I also don't want to keep you longer than 20 minutes, so sometimes I need to talk fast. Apologies for that. So the second Tuatha warband is kind of the opposite, if you like. There are some guys with slings, because Tuatha don't do well if you don't take some ranged capacity. But mostly you've got 3 elite warriors and 2 slingers, so you've got much more kind of combat-y capability with them. And then I've got the Wolf Occult warband, which is all grapply. There's no missile involvement at all. So there's sort of 3 flavours of Tuatha warband to play with. And being Tuatha, they're quite cheap, so you're getting 5 models aside, which in this game is going to give them a bit of an advantage numerically, because it's usually better to have more models on the table than to have a very small number of good models. An average number of good models is better than a large number of mediocre models. But because we're playing with half-sized warbands, the rain's getting heavier, can you hear it now? Because we're playing with half-sized warbands, you can very quickly, if you go for particularly elite specialist troops, you can very quickly find that you've only got 1 or 2 models to pick from, and then it's difficult to have a game of this kind with this scenario, because there isn't capacity for you to get around the board quickly enough. So anyway, those are my sort of Tuatha warbands, and those I will recommend to people who are just beginning the game. But if people want to stay on, or if people want to play a particular band that's a bit different from that, then I will have some other options. I'm going to have some Mieri, so that's going to be a very simple warband. That's just going to be 4 Losbustin. That's all that's going to comprise of. So they're going to be fast, heavy hitting, no missile capability, nothing particularly special about them, but fast and heavy hitting guys. I'm kind of expecting that they'll do quite well. This is the kind of scenario that being fast is going to be an advantage, but the way that I'm hoping to run it means that just because they can get to an objective quickly doesn't necessarily give them a game-winning advantage, because there are other strategies that can help a band that can't quite get there as fast to make up the distance by ambushing, by lying in wait, by playing with coercion and things that are a bit more interesting, which is why I hope it will show off some of those mechanics a bit better. So anyway, 4 fast, heavy-hitting Losbustin. I've got a Goblin warband. This is 4 goblins. Obviously, goblins are not that fast, not that hard-hitting, but they are obviously quite difficult to kill. I say obviously. If you know anything about the game, goblins are quite sturdy little fellows. They're quite they sit there and they absorb blows and they don't go down. So I've chosen to have 4, and these will be oakbound models. I've chosen to have 4 of the same style miniature for my goblins. It's 4 of the sort of armoured goblin with the advancing with the axe, and I've painted them in different colours and put numbers on their armour as a kind of nod to the labyrinthy goblins. If you remember the goblins in the Goblin Battle with the Labyrinth, you've got the ones that are riding on the sort of dinosaur type creatures, and they've basically got the same armour. There are some slight differences, but they basically got the same armour, but it's painted in different colours, and then they've got they're numbered, so you can tell which one's which by which number and which one's in charge by which number. So that's what I've gone for these guys as a nod to that, and they're all the same armed, but they've got goblin armour, which I have randomly generated, but whereas normal goblin armour you randomly generate 3 stats that can cancel each other out. They can give you advantages or they can give you disadvantages. In this case I've just gone for the one and they're different for each model, but I've just gone for the one first thing that I randomly generated for each model. So you get some sense, but not perhaps the full sense of how goblins work. But their armor and their ability to absorb damage is their main trait. So they can just sit on an objective and not move and outlast the game, basically, unless you do something clever about them. I have got some pixies. Of course, as I am just bringing out the Pixie Warband, I decided that I should have some pixies on the table. So I've got a leader here. He's denoted by having black quills. The others have got green quills. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But yeah, he's one of the badger riders. And then I've got another badger riding pixie. And I've got two gillies. So you've got some movement capacity, some fighting capacity. Yeah, just be good to get those guys on the table. I think they'll do quite well. And they have got their pixie lead skill, which means that they can distract and make models move around differently to how players might want them to. So they'll be quite good for dealing with the fast-moving troops, because obviously the faster a model moves in its regular movement, the faster or the further it's going to be capable of being distracted away from its objective by the pixies. So that should help to deal a bit with the fast-moving troops. I've got some leprechauns because I wanted to involve a little bit of fate weaving in there. I don't normally bother with fate weaving on demo games, or at least do so in very small amounts, because it's just another thing to learn. But it's interesting to see how it works as differently from the way that magic works in quite a lot of fantasy games. So I thought it'd be good to have some fate weaving in there. So we've got a Feardag and two corns, but because it's obviously limited by the points, it's not a very big warband. So they'll, I guess, be doing a lot of dancing, which is good because, or always good for the leprechauns to do, because on this board there should be plenty of places that they can pop up unnoticed. So it should be quite good for a dancing warband. Be interesting to see how they work, and their focus will be largely magic. So there will be some movement, but they will have a crib sheet for fate weaving as well, and that will be very much the focus of that band. And then I've got 3 Norlocks, again small because of the points limitation. I've got a sort of heavy hitting leader, I've got the sneaky stabby assassin type character, and I've got the shooty musket type character. So I don't know how well they will complement each other in that mix, but it's like sort of one of each things, a hard hitter, a shooter, and a stealthy in and out expert. So that should give quite a lot of flexibility, but obviously only one model in each area, so it will they can get an area of specialism removed from them pretty quickly by just taking out a single model, and they probably, to fulfill their roles, they probably won't stick very closely together, so they will be quite vulnerable. They'll have to do a lot of shifting around and hiding in order to not be targeted as lone models, whereas the goblins are probably all going to stick together en masse and just be an immovable swarm. I've decided to paint these. I talked a little bit about how I was painting the goblins, but I've decided to paint the others in a way that is quite different from how they're painted. The ones that I painted for the website are painted just to sort of show different ways of doing it. So the leprechauns, there's a bit of green on them, of course, because they're leprechauns, but I've gone with some bright pink coats and some black and white stripy trousers, and tried to make them really kind of bright and clownish and outlandish looking. The pixies I've gone very punk on, that's why some of them have got green spines, and they've got the kind of fairly standard Sex Pistols tartan attire on them, and I've done their bases in this bright pink with a black and pink checker line instead of the usual white line that I do to denote the centre front line of the base. And I just wanted to be able to do these in a way that was a bit fun whenever I'm painting stuff for the website, and was a way that I've got to toe a line between making it look like it fits in the world, choosing a paint scheme that fits with a kind of dark age, slightly gritty but also quite folky environment, and also showing what they could be used for outside of the game. So if they're a nod to a faction in perhaps a more popular fantasy tabletop game, I might choose to paint them in a way that indicates how they might be possibly used outside of the woods, in order to try and generate some more sales, because I know that there aren't that many people who are actually playing the woods in comparison to some of these other games that people might be buying the figures for, so kind of have to do that. But for this I wanted to be a bit more fun with them, just have a play with colour schemes in small quantities of figures, and just make them look entertaining on the battlefield. They're going to get handled, they're going to get moved around, so I'm not being precious about them. I'm just having some fun painting them up. And I've decided to go for different styles of basing as well. So my Tuatha are all based on the standard 30mm round with a centre front line on them. My Mieri are based on 25mm squares. My Goblins are based on 25mm rounds. My Pixies are on 30mm rounds. My Leprechauns are on hex bases, and my Norlocks are on 20mm square bases. And the reason for this is that I again wanted to show that you don't have to base the way that I have on the website, or that it lists in the book. There are guidelines for basing in the book, but I try to make them really general because I want people to be able to use whatever figures they have on whatever bases they currently have, and I don't want people to be limited to just using these figures for the woods. So if you buy, and let's say you buy some Goblins and you want to be playing Frostgrave with them, and so you want them on 25 rounds, if that's what you use in Frostgrave, I honestly don't know. You want them on 25 rounds, that's fine, you can have them on 25 rounds. It doesn't make any difference really to how they play in the woods. You're at an advantage the smaller your base is, so there are guidelines that say basically that if your base is so small that your model overturns and falls down, then it counts as falling prone, so it's to try and stop people putting massive great giant models on tiny little bases. And there are suggested base sizes for each creature type, but they're only suggestions because people will use different models. You should use a base that suits the model. The bigger the base that you choose, the more of a disadvantage you're at theoretically, because the base is used for judging line of sight, and the base is also used for determining how many people can get into combat with the model. So the bigger your base, the more opponents you can be facing at the same time. But the reality is that you're probably only going to be facing 3 or 4 at most opponents at the same time. That's usually more than enough to take somebody down in one go. So by the time you've got a base that's big enough for 4 opponents to get around you, that's probably as much of a disadvantage as you're going to get. So smaller bases are usually an advantage. But as I say, if you make it so small that the model can't actually stand up on the base, then you're disadvantaging yourself, and that's written into the rules. But it doesn't matter what shape you use. The Vision templates in the first place were designed around a hex base. They were designed for factious waste, and I wanted everything there to be hex based. So the hex bases will be totally fine, as long as you've got a centre front line or a very clear line of direction. And that's what I've done on my square bases. I haven't got a centre front line because I want to use them for ranked up mass combat battles usually, if I'm basing on square bases, and I don't want a white line on the base because it doesn't serve a purpose in those games, and it doesn't look that great if it doesn't serve a purpose. So instead I just make sure that they're lined up to a corner of the base, and let's say that corner is a very obvious corner, and that corner is my centre front line, and everything else you can work out from there. So yeah, I wanted an assortment of bases to show that it doesn't really matter what you play with. and an assortment of colour schemes to look fun, and an assortment of different warbands in order to play up different aspects of the game. And I hope it will well. I'm going to be I hope it will work well. I'm going to be doing some test games on Friday of this week, so I shall let you know how that goes, and I might tweak it. But yeah, as I say, the rules will be out in the Acorn at the beginning of April. So if you can't make it to Salute but you want to play the game at home yourself, you can do using those rules. Cool. So that is oakbound.co.uk/news if you haven't already signed up to that. Thank you for joining me, and I shall see you again next week. Take care.